Good morning. Happy Monday. For those of you who are just jumping on over here from our 9 o'clock training, welcome back. If you missed our training, but you're here for just Q&A, sorry I'm late. Training went long, and for some reason, I did not keep track of time. I'm usually much better at that. So, oops, sorry guys. As I was telling my training crew, at 9 o'clock as well, it's kind of throwing me off because my machine clock is about 3 or 4 minutes slower than actual time. Not that excuses me from being 10 minutes late, but it accounts for some of it, right? Because if it was right, I would have only been 5 minutes late. Anyway, welcome. Happy Monday. Happy Martin Luther King Jr. Day. If you are fortunate enough to have today off, yay. I challenge you, whether you have today off or not, to spend a few minutes doing some Google research on Martin Luther King Jr. and just learning a little bit about him and why we get a day off because of him. He is the only American other than George Washington whose birthday is an actual national holiday. So kind of cool, right? He obviously did some cool things. I shared these. I'm a numbers person, so I want to share with a few numbers about Martin Luther King Jr. That I shared. If you were in my training, it's the same thing. But y'all, he wrote 6 books. He gave over 2,500 speeches. He was imprisoned nearly 30 times. He won 1 Grammy. Cool, right? And he was the youngest recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize at age 35, I believe, until Malala won it at age 17 in 2014. So there you go. Hit you with some knowledge. Didn't know you were getting. So again, I challenge you today to go do a little bit of more research on why he's the only American whose birthday we celebrate, other than George Washington, who I guess, even George Washington now shares his birthday with the other presidents. So just saying. All right, you guys, as you're jumping in, welcome. Please start posting those questions in the Q&A. Any questions you guys have. If it's about, maybe you're getting your year-end books all situated, maybe you're curious about which tax forms you're expecting and when, what else might you have questions on? When your tax returns are due, maybe you have questions about that. Maybe you have questions, whatever you have questions about, you guys. Anything anything about taxes and accounting. If you have questions about the stimulus bill, that is like the most common thing we're getting questions about right now. So definitely, if you have any questions about that, put those in the comments as well. I will start talking a little bit about the most recent stimulus update, but there hasn't been a lot of activity between last week and this week in terms of any further guidance or anything. So a lot of what I say will be a repeat of last week, but if you weren't here, great. Or if you were listening, but sometimes this stuff, you guys, I have been learning PPP, EIDL, stimulus, all these things. I have been learning about it and working on it since last March. Okay. Since last March. And I have put hundreds of hours into educating myself and making sure that I understand it. And yes, we will talk about first round, second round, Maureen, for sure. I have some timelines for you, but not a lot, but yeah, we'll talk about that for sure. But what I was saying is I have hundreds of hours into this, and I have an accounting and tax background, right? Some of this stuff I still I'm just getting my brain wrapped around, or I got it, but I'm like, how do I explain to my clients and my watchers, this is how you should be looking out for this. You might qualify for that, all these things. So we'll talk a little bit today about those different things, those different pieces. But let's talk about the big one, the second round of PPP, right? Or the first round if you never got a first round back in 2020. So first round borrowers, meaning you did not borrow money back in 2020, but you need to borrow money now. Okay, those portals opened up for smaller regional banks and smaller regional local banks last Monday. Last Monday. And your second round If you're looking for a second round of PPP, if you bank with a smaller bank, then that should have opened last Wednesday. I will tell you, I bank with MidFirst Bank, which is a regional bank in Kansas City, I think, the Midwest. I'm in Colorado. I was able to submit my application last Thursday, but they specifically said that the SBA is not looking at them till tomorrow. Okay, so tomorrow's the first day they'll actually look at them, and then Wells Fargo, I don't have the specific date, Maureen, but US Bank, that's my husband's business bank, they said they would open those applications tomorrow. So it seems like the big banks are opening this week. So I usually kind of tend to think that US Bank, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, those ones are usually in the same bucket. They're in this, big bank bucket up here. And then you have your regional banks. That's what MidFirst, First Bank, Bank of the West. Those are ones I know because I'm in Colorado. But the other ones, okay, those are your regional banks, and those should already be open. So let's see. You should have, most banks, you guys, did email their users to say the portal's opening up soon. Your application, and they sent you a copy of the paper application, or they will, to kind of give you an idea of what you need to submit. I will tell you from my experience that I went through it, and I'm actually going through it for a couple other clients as well, smaller banks. But the application process seems to be a bit smoother this time, and they're definitely asking for everything in one flail swoop. For those of you that are on your second round, think back to when you applied back. It could be as early as it could be as long ago as last April, right? But when you went, it's like you filled out this application, and then you waited and you waited and you waited, and then the bank finally was like, "Okay, we got your application. Here's all the documents we need." And then you had to go back and you had to go pull all the documents that you probably already pulled to get the information from your application. It was just kind of a hot mess, right? It was just it was kind of drug out. This time, the applications that I filled out 3 so far, and those second round applications, everything is in one. They're like, okay, they ask a revenue question, and they ask for the supporting information, like how much are you asking for? And they're like, okay, give us the payroll reports that support this amount. Okay, so it seems to be a lot more organized this time around. Okay. Y'all, I'm getting a lot of Facebook user comments, which is awesome. I will go through them. But reminder that if you want me to know who you are, there should be a link in the top that says allow StreamYard to use your username so I can see who you are. However, I tend to cheat and I open up Facebook on my other window. So I just didn't this morning, but I'm opening it now. YouTube users, I can see y'all. Let's see, there we are. Okay, is that me? Nope, that's last week. I don't even know today's date. Oh, there I am. Okay, awkward, I'm sure. Okay, here we go. So Paula says, at check, my payment at IRS said stimulus was mailed on January 6th. Still no stimulus. Has anyone received a check yet? Let me pull that up. So there's the comment. Excuse me. I have not seen any checks being made or being received yet. That's not to say they aren't being, okay? January 6th it should have been, there's so many variables here, right? First of all, the IRS is a hot mess, but if you checked your payment and it says it was mailed on January 6th, then it probably was. Like, that's not something that the IRS is known for not doing. There's plenty of things they do wrong. That is not one of them. But then the post office is also kind of a hot mess, right? So there's multiple pieces going on here. If you were fortunate enough to have things set up for direct deposit, you should have received those already. Most of them went out like New Year's Eve or New Year's weekend. But then I read that they're doing them in cycles again. So Maureen's, oh, great, Maureen. Maureen got her money. Awesome. What else? So back to the stimulus. So I would be curious if anyone else is expecting a check, a physical check in the mail. If you've received it, let us know, because that would really help. I think it would help each other to know if some people have started receiving it, and if so, when. And if they received it, what was that mail date on their IRS check my payment, right? So kind of interesting to tie everything out together. Okay. I got to scroll up a little bit. Okay. So we paid our employees COVID relief in December due to them being sick and taking time off. Okay. I've heard that I should be deducting that in some capacity on my Form 941, but I don't know what that looks like. So not going to lie, I don't either, because I don't do my own payroll. I have a third-party company that does it because payroll is a headache. So for those of you that do your own payroll, good for you. But I don't. And I'm an accountant. But there is let me look at how ours is set up. There is a section, and Jessica Weeds on this call. And Jess, I feel like maybe you did this. If you did, let me know, because I feel like maybe this applied to you. But what happens is, you guys, let's start with what the rule is. So the rule says, if your employees have to miss work because of COVID, they could be sick, they could have to quarantine because they were exposed, or because they think they're sick. But if they have to miss work because of COVID-related issues to themselves, okay, taking care of a sick child or a quarantined child is that's under the Family Medical Leaves Act, slightly different. So coming back here to this one. So if they have to miss work because they have COVID, they're quarantining because they think they have COVID, or they're quarantining because they might have been exposed to COVID, you can pay those. Some employers are required to pay. Most are. Smaller businesses are not. However, I recommend that you do pay them, because you get a credit back for what you pay. Okay. So if I pay my employees for X amount of hours because they had to miss COVID or miss work because of COVID, I get a credit back for those gross wages that I paid because they missed out. They missed out on work. That said, there was one more piece I was going to say to that. Max at 2 weeks, I believe. 10 days. 10 days or 2 weeks. To me, they're the same thing, but there is a max. That said, how do you get this credit? So that's what this is asking. How do you get it? Well, if you use a third-party payroll, such as ADP or Gusto, or those are the two I know, but it probably is the same with Paychex or the other ones. There will be a section when you're entering your time for COVID leave. Okay. And if there's not, you just need to reach out to your payroll provider and have them add it. That's how it was with us. With ADP, this section wasn't on there. I reached out to my account manager. I said, hey, I got to pay an employee for COVID time. How do I do that? She's like, oh, here's the column. And she added the column to my payroll. I believe QuickBooks payroll also has that. I forget about them. Also has that. My question here is, I'm not sure. It sounds like, based on this comment, that you're manually doing your 941s on your own, in which case I believe it's on the last page. Let's see. Now I'm seeing Jess, this is your question. I pulled up Facebook. So when I asked Jess for help, I'm like, oh, Jess, this is you. It's fine. So Jess, I like it better when I know who I'm talking to. So good. So Jess, I know you process your own payroll. So I think it's on the second page, but of the 941, but I'm not positive on that. Okay. So I don't know if you want people to know you're a client. Your client, email me. I can help you through it. That's what we do. Okay. So let's keep going. Also, Jess, just submitted my documents for PPP Forgiveness. Congrats. That's awesome. I do want to tell you guys, I forgot to mention this. If you're looking for a second round of PPP, okay, the rule says that you have to have spent all of your first one. It says nothing about having to have applied for forgiveness yet, okay? And what we're finding, you guys, is not me, but another one of my CPA colleagues has been she's had some clients or some people who, if they're in the actual forgiveness process, they're having they're being told they can't apply for another loan yet. So we're not seeing trouble with people who haven't applied for forgiveness. We're not seeing a problem with people who have been forgiven for their loan. But for people that are probably like Jess, where you've submitted it, but you haven't yet been granted forgiveness, you may have some pushback from the bank. That's not legit pushback. Okay. There's nothing in the SBA guidance, at least not as it stands right now, that says that this should be a problem. It just says as long as you've spent all of your first round PPP money, that you can apply for a second round. Okay. Assuming you show that 25% in drop in revenue. Okay. But I want to give a heads up. So if you guys are having problems because you're in forgiveness, you're in the forgiveness process for your first loan, you're not alone. Okay. All right. Let's see. Saw that. I want to see who this is. All right. This is Paula. Is there still, excuse me, is there still coming a new blanket forgiveness for first loan? Kind of. Okay. So it's not blanket forgiveness. It's not the SBA is going to go through their ledger and all SBA loans under 150, they're just going to forget about. Okay. However, they have simplified the process. They've simplified the process for loans less than 150, and they simplified it even more for loans under 50,000. Let's see if I can remember this because it's been a couple of weeks since I looked at this one. So for the 150,000, nope, let's start with the 50. So for loans under 50 grand, all right, we're talking about first round. I'm assuming second round will be the same. We don't know yet because they just came out with the application process. But for my first round borrowers from 2020, you're ready to apply for forgiveness. If it's under $50,000, it's going to be, from what we are understanding, it's going to be a front and back certification page, right? So you're certifying to making these agreements, right? I spent the money on qualified expenses. I didn't fire people I didn't cut people. So you're certifying that you followed all the rules. Okay, that's it. You submit that 2-page application. There's no additional documentation required. So you don't have to turn in the payroll report. You don't have to turn in the FTE calculations. You don't have to turn in the rent statements if you spent some of it on rent. All you have to turn in is that front and back page. Okay. Now, if it's really important for you to remember, you guys, that that's all it takes for you to get forgiven. However, you do want to make sure you have access to those supporting documents if the SBA comes back and audits you in the future. Okay. So do I recommend that you still make a file of all those documents and you put it in a safe place? So if the SBA comes knocking on your door, you don't have to frantically scrounge around looking for them? Yes. But you're welcome to just be like, I'm just going to deal with it if it comes. Okay. And then for loans up to 150, there's going to be a new simplified forgiveness application. I'm guessing it's going to look like the S form that's currently out. That's my guess, but I'm not sure. We're guessing it's going to be out in the next week or two, but we don't know. And that's similar, you guys. So if you look at the S form right now for forgiveness, that's what we're guessing the new simplified application is going to look like. All right, for all loans under $150,000. And what we're really hoping is that it has that FTE exclusion. Like you don't have to prove the FTE forgiveness. You don't have to prove any of that. You're just granted it. Okay, fingers crossed. So we're still waiting for some guidance on that. We'll see what they come back with. So let's see. I think that's all I've got. Yeah, that's all I got over here. So the only other thing I want to talk about, you guys, real quick before I let you guys go, is the employee retention credit. Okay, so if I lost you, come back to me for just a minute. Okay. I'm not going to go into depth with this, but I want to tell you what it is and kind of give you some, like, maybe this applies to me. Okay. So the employer retention credit. Okay. It was available in 2020, but when they were in the CARES Act, it was either the retention credit or the PPP, right? And most people went for the PPP because it was a lot more beneficial. And so once you went for the PPP, you didn't care about the employee retention credit or the ERC because you couldn't get both. This new guidance that came out in December says you can get both, and we can make it retroactive to 2020. And then they also they created a separate ERC with different qualifications and different requirements for first and second quarter of 2021. So what is this credit? I'm still trying to figure out the best way to explain this in the simplest way possible to y'all. But if you have employees, okay, keep listening. If you're a sole prop, can't get it, okay? But if you have employees, keep listening up, okay? In 2020, what you had to do was show a reduction in your receipts from a quarter. So it's a quarter by quarter analysis. Okay. So you would analyze first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. You'd look at your gross revenue for that quarter and you compare it to the same quarter from 2019. And if you had at least a 50% decrease in revenue, you qualify for this credit. So that's what I want you to take away from this today. Okay. Go look at your financials quarter by quarter for 2020. Compare them to the same quarter from 2019. And if you have any quarter where you have at least a 50% decrease in gross revenue, and you have employees, then this credit should be of interest for you. Like that's take the next step, right? It's kind of like a choose your own adventure. If not, stop. There's no need for you to learn about it from last year. Going forward, in 2021, you only have to show a 20% decrease in revenue comparing 2021 to 2019 to qualify for this credit. So something, again, you can't look at now, but we'll touch base again after March 31st and talk about. All right. Okay, you guys, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. I loved all the engagement. I loved all the questions. It's a lot easier to get through this 30 minutes when y'all bring questions. So I appreciate it, and it was awesome. If you guys are watching this on replay and you have further questions, don't leave them in the comments. Go ahead and go to the my Money Tax and Finance for Small Businesses. Go to that Facebook group and post your questions there. That way me and my team can see them and we can answer them. We just monitor that a little more in depth than the comments of previous videos and trainings. Otherwise, I will see you guys next week. If you want to join me for next week's training, we're talking about the new 1099 NEC form, which is the form you're going to complete if you had contractors in 2020. It essentially replaces your 1099 miss for those contractors. We're going to be talking about it next week. Definitely want to join me if you have not filed those yet, because they are due January 31st. So this training will be on the 25th, and then you'll have a week to file those forms for us, okay? Or for you, not for us. And then, so that's next week's training. That's 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And if you guys have more questions that come up throughout this week and you want to join me, or you just want to get the answers to everyone else's questions, that's at 9:30 next Monday. All right. So 9 and 9:30. All right. That's it. I will see you guys next week. I hope you guys have a fantastic week. Bye, guys.